officer from the previous planning commission, so we'll let her get started and start our the agenda and then get us to nominations.
Okay, I'm going to call it to order at 7:02. And we'll start with the pledge of allegiance. Please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And moving on to election of officers.
So for the elections, you can do it. You can either do volunteers or nominations, whatever the planning commission prefers to get to do those officers.
All right, chair, anybody in? What if we don't have any?
Somebody's got to do it.
I'd like to nominate Andy Graves.
Anyone else?
Did you need a second for that too?
Second it? Anyone?
I'll second.
All right.
And then are there any other nominations? Okay, then you just do all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. This is kind of odd to vote for myself.
Congratulations. Okay, vice chair. Nominations, volunteers?
I'd like to nominate Laura Carlton to vice chair.
You can decline.
I decline.
I know, I already asked her what today, earlier today. That's the only reason I knew.
I don't think that's a good trade.
I'll nominate Bill Dvorak. I probably mispronounced your name. Dvorak, I apologize.
All right. And,
Any other nominations? Okay. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I guess Andy can take over from you, Carl. Oh,
Yay.
Laura. He's chair now. Nothing wrong with it.
So first of all, before we proceed further, to all the fellow planning commission members and to citizens of Torch Lake Township, just want to let all of you know how much of a privilege it is to A, serve on the planning commission, and B, be nominated as chairperson. I never thought I would be in this position if you'd asked me a couple months ago, or even a month ago, or even yesterday. But I would say that it's definitely an honor and privilege. I grew up here, and I'm looking forward to serving the community to the best of my abilities. So moving on to the next order of business here, that would be the appointment, for the secretary for the Planning Commission. Laura, I believe you're currently the secretary. Do you nominate Laura remain in that position?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Laura remains secretary. Then the next would be the appointment to the ZBA, the representative to be appointed to the ZBA. Sarah, can you describe a little bit about why we do this?
Yeah, so one of the reasons is because the state law requires us to have that crossover from the planning commission to the zoning board of appeals. But it's important to have that representative there because if the ZBA is making a lot of interpretations or variance approvals, they can come back to the planning commission and say, hey, planning commission, we need to look at this part of the ordinance. So it allows for that dialogue between the two boards. They did just change their meetings to the third Wednesday at 7 p.m. So if that changes anybody's calendar availability for that, but you would be basically required to attend the planning commission meetings and the zoning board of appeals meetings.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we'll start. Anybody would like to volunteer?
All right, I'll second that.
Have a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none? Thank you very much. So now I believe we move on to consideration of the agenda. So the agenda, everyone I believe has it in front of them. First of all, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, terrific. Looking through the agenda tonight, there's several items that I think would go fairly quickly, but then there's a couple that, or several that I think are going to require a fair amount of discussion, or certainly could. But we're going to be, the primary purpose of it today was the public hearing for the Chapter 20 of the Zoning Board of Appeals and Section 2.16, the High Watermark Amendment. Those are the two primary public hearing aspects of it. And then as we move through the agenda, there's the Planning Commission itself would consider those. And then also from business that was started at previous meetings, the Village Business Commercial Zoning District discussion around an amendment to that. So I'd ask the members, are there any questions or items to discuss on the agenda? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so let's move forward with the agenda. At this point, conflict of interest. Is there anybody, any planning commission member that has perceived or a real conflict of interest for any items today? Hearing none, chairperson has none either. So I guess we can continue forward. We move on to the public hearing. So there's two components to the public hearing. Just to clarify, first component is Chapter 20 of the Zoning Board of Appeals Amendment. The second component is item B, Section 2.16, the High Water Mark Amendment. We're going to have two separate hearings for each one of these. The first one will be Chapter 20. At this point, we invite the public to come up for comments. Please return in your cards or comment cards in advance to the secretary. And then we'll be confined to about 3 minutes to discuss or lay out your comments, and please direct them to the chair. So at this point, I move to open the public hearing.
All right, I've got a couple of public comments. One is Jerry Kolka. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Do what?
Could you speak into the mic?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is this better? Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, it'd be, on the-
Sure. So any public comments on, for Chapter 20 Zoning Board of Appeals Amendment? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll move on to Section B, or Item B, Section 2.16, High Water Mark Amendment. Anybody have comments they would like to make? Please turn in your comment cards. Have any been turned in?
I just have the two for Jerry and Rob.
Okay. Absolutely.
About the other people's, finish building.
Okay.
Do you want to just talk during general public comment, or do you want to talk specific about this amendment, the high watermark amendment?
Public hearing for the high water mark.
Okay, you're the
Perfect.
only one that wants to talk about that, so
Oh,
why don't you come up and do that and then fill out, then you
We're
can fill out
fine.
your card after.
Please.
okay. Do it thing a little backwards. My name is Bob Spencer. I live at 709 Northwest Torch Lake Drive, Keewaydin, Michigan. Excuse me. Just a few general comments, and I am familiar with the concept of ordinary high water mark. Excuse me. I would just like you people during your discussion to talk about what the problems were that you're trying to solve by establishing an ordinary high water mark on Torch Lake. I did talk to the drain commissioner, sent him an email. He sent me, and I asked him, does Torch Lake have an official ordinary high water mark? And he emailed me back after a few hours, actually. And he said, no, typically inland lakes do not have an ordinary high water mark. I served in your position for 7 or 8 years, and we talked about ordinary high water mark. And I also served for about that length of time on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And at the time, it established the 50-foot from the water line setback on Torch Lake. Just one thing or a few things for you to think about. There are 7 townships on Torch Lake. Mark Stone, is that the Mark Stone? Yeah, the drain commissioner. That's what. Anyway, he told me that his suggestion to other townships was, if you're trying to establish an ordinary high water mark, then get together with your neighboring townships and try to come up with the same number. We've got 7 different townships in 2 different counties. If every township makes its own ordinary high water mark, that to me is not good public policy. Secondly, they're having sat in on all the discussions we had several years ago about establishing the 50-foot setback on Torch Lake. There was a lot of discussion there. And the idea of ordinary high water mark certainly applies to Lake Michigan, but that's all in the hands of the Army Corps of Engineers. The township has no jurisdiction over that. However, the 50-foot setback, we felt at the time, would be easier to measure for the homeowner than the ordinary high water mark. For those of you who live on Torch Lake or any other lake, or think about it, how would you find your ordinary high water mark on your property? I live on Torch Lake. I don't know where the ordinary high water mark is. I do know where the 50-foot measurement is. And if I don't, I can get my tape measure out and measure it quite easily and get a very good approximation. In order, it seems to me in thinking about this, in order to find where the ordinary high water mark of a person's lot on Torch Lake is, you'd have to have your lot surveyed. There are over 400 property owners on Torch Lake, about the same number on Lake Michigan. If every homeowner has to get their lot surveyed to find out where the ordinary high water mark is, I know what my surveys have cost, but it's usually over $1,000. And so you're going to have 450 plus people who, if they want to establish where their ordinary high water mark is, they're going to have to get it surveyed. Well, thanks a lot, Planning Commission. And board, you passed a rule that requires me to hire a surveyor to come in and come up with a point. The other thing we need to realize, and I'm taking more than 2 minutes, and I apologize, so I better get going here. But Torch Lake, water in Torch Lakes splashes around like water in a bathtub. And if you get big winds out of the southwest, you get big waves in the northeast corner of the lake, and vice versa. If you get big winds out of the south, the north end of the lake goes up about a foot, and the water moves around. Same thing happens on Big Lake, but there's no finite ordinary high water mark. Secondly, what do you do with the 100-foot wide lot that has 150 feet of frontage because it's an angled lot? one part's in a wetland right on the water line, and another one has a 10-foot clay bank on it. Where are you going to put the ordinary high water mark? There was a reason that the prior group picked a 50-foot setback from the water line. It's easier to find the water line. You don't need a surveyor. But you have to recognize that the water line is a fluctuating, ever-changing part of the environment too, because of all the factors I talked about. Thank you. I talked too long. I wish you well in your deliberations, and I would like to welcome the new members to the committee. I have great expectations for you, and I'm proud that you're working on the committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional comments? Yeah. Anybody else? Mr. Sirdarn.
I haven't had a chance to talk to the president, but I built Finite, 5903 North MBE, Eastport, Michigan. Just for the sake of the group up here, the problem arose on an ordinary high water mark of Torch Lake is one of the landowners had it addressed as a high water mark in the spring, 50-foot setback. From my understanding, the builder did make an error. It was inside that setback by a foot. But at the time he brought the error to the notice of the planning, or not the planning, but the consultant, was that he measured 50 foot back from the water's edge. Well, it depends on when you measure it back and forth. It could be there or here. So the purpose of this suggestion, and it was a suggestion, and we looked at other townships in Charlevoix, Milton Township, et cetera, is how do you establish a finite mark so when people are building something on Torch Lake, they can say, that's the mark. In talking to 4 surveyors, they all suggested, along with Mark Stone, the drain commissioner for Antrim County, he said, I agree with your premise. It should be above sea level. So the planning commission met and we discussed it, and we came up with the help of our consultant of a level of 590.8 feet above sea level. That's a constant. The interesting thing is this summer, because of the rains that fell, we had 8 inches of rain within 24 hours. But the watermark, the water edge went from here to there within 24 hours. So you're a landowner and you want to abide by the policies of Torch Lake Township, where do you measure from? So the whole idea was, let's have a constant point above sea level, which is not normal, but pretty well accepted with other townships with inland lakes where this is a problem. Sidebar just for a second. Many of us, myself included, were always under the impression that the Elk Rapids Dam controlled the lake level of Torch Lake and Clam Lake. According to Mark Stone, the expert, it has no effect on it whatsoever. He says you can't let water out of a bucket through a straw and make a difference, meaning the Torch River. So he said, I have no control over Torch Lake, none. I can open it up or shut it down. He said, by the way, with the approval of the Corps of Engineers. So the thought was, let's stop going back and forth and be fair to our property owners and say, this is a mark above sea level going forward. So I just want to bring that clarity to you. That's the purpose of this, other than trying to get some commonality among all the ordinances that we have. So hopefully that helped you a little bit. Any questions?
No, thank you, Bill. That is helpful.
Sure.
On average, Bill, 590 feet above sea level, is that what you said?
590.8.
Okay, so on average, how far away would that be from the water?
Jason, it's hard to ask. Okay, let's look out my front window.
I have no
Okay,
idea.
let's look out my front window at Torch Lake. And I've got a dock out there that we put in May. I'm trying to help you here. So I look out there and I'm looking at my ladder going down from my dock, and the first 2 rungs of the ladder are above the water level. I look out this is unusual, but stay with me on this. I look out in the mid-June or late June, and my dock is underwater. I've never seen that before, ever. Now, part of that is the rainfall, and part of it is what they call a seiche. Picture a bowl of water that you go like this. That's Torch Lake. If the winds are really blowing a lot, the water comes up at the north end and comes up the beach. Now, if you were to walk in my property, by the way, just another sidebar, I'm sorry. My neighbor just had his lot surveyed. So I'm down there and I'm looking at the guy sticking stakes in the ground and going, hey, I got a question for you. And I watched the high watermark thing, and how much of a big deal is it to you, a surveyor, to point out where 590.8 feet is above sea level? So he takes his, whatever the thing is called, GPS, and he goes, there it is. Oh, there it is? Yeah. Well, the water levels at that point in time was here, and the beach is here. And I'm going, that's interesting. I said, now let me ask you the next question. If the landowner wants to build a new building on Torch Lake and needs to have a 50-foot setback, and you're required as a surveyor to do this now because if it passes, what would that cost a landowner to have that point marked on the survey, in addition to whatever you're doing? He says, I don't know, $50. So it's really a negligible fee to have somebody do that. I was thinking 300, just to be honest with you. But I did do a survey of my neighbors, and he said, right there. So the GPS gives him the exact location above sea level. And my thought was, and our thoughts were, let's get it common, where there is no in the spring, in the fall, where do you build? And Mr. Spencer brings up a real good point. There's a lot of property owners that either way it will be affected, whether it's the water's edge or above sea level. But either way it is affected. So hopefully that helps you a little bit.
No, I think it does. Thank you. Thank you.
Bill, thanks for inviting everybody to come walk on your property.
Not a problem, just bring a couple beers.
Are there any more public comments for this hearing on section 2.16, the high water mark amendment?
Any rebuttals? Your thought?
It's up to you.
No rebuttals at this point.
I'll turn in my comments.
So at this point, I ask for a motion to secure or complete the public hearing for both A and B, the two items on our agenda here.
I'll second.
Actually, yes, absolutely.
I do have a question for you.
Sure.
When we had that prior discussion about the other communities around, do you remember somebody had the data on what level other communities had adapted? Do you recall that?
Yes, Milton Township was 590.8 feet above sea level.
Yeah. Okay, that, because Bob raised a good point about making sure that there was.
He did. Yeah, Milton Township had the same type of thing. Also, just so you know, Eveline Township, south arm of Charleroi, they have a, whatever it may be, I'm not sure what it is, but they have a point above sea level as well.
Thank you.
So I see, Bill, you made a motion to complete this portion of the agenda, the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Now, just for the commission members, I personally have a lot of questions around this. I was going to save that for the discussion itself around how these numbers came up with and kind of the process around it. And I do thank the input from the audience as far as helping to understand it. So that's very helpful.
What's that?
Yes, we did. So at this point, we move on to the approval of meeting minutes from October 7th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 7th?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from October 7th.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? Does anybody have any comments or concerns about the amendment?
No.
Yeah, I think there's something inaccurate in October 7 minutes. The first paragraph. Let's see. B. Peterson, regarding conflict of interest, addressed 3 members passing around a petition to negate work already approved. That is an inaccurate statement of what the petition is. And maybe what the person meant when they said it, but that's not accurate. The petition is for a referendum to put a zoning decision of the board to a vote of people, not for or against.
Where are you reading about?
The middle of paragraph number 4, the beginning of the sentence, it says regarding conflict of interest. That next sentence says 3 members passing around a petition to negate work already approved. And the petition is a petition for a referendum to allow the citizens to vote on a decision that was made by the board, or by the board. But it's not to negate anything, it's to ask them whether they accept or reject the decision of the board.
So you're just clarifying that?
Yeah, well, I'm saying that that's just inaccurate. It's not a petition to negate work already approved. It's a petition for a referendum.
I understand your point, Barbara, so we need some clarifying language in that.
I'm just wondering if he actually said that. If that's what he said, it's to negate the work of the board. We can't change what the public comment said. So I think that you could clarify, you're in discussion, you could clarify that had to do with the petition, but I don't recall what was said, what the comment was, but even if they're incorrect comments, we can't correct what they said.
I think that is definitely what he was saying. I don't
Yeah.
know if he was specifically saying that it was negating, but
Yeah.
that was definitely what
The
he was
gist of
getting
it.
at.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we have any others that were present or recall that that was accurate to what was actually stated?
It probably is what he said. I'm just saying it's not accurate. I mean, it's accurate what he said, but it's not what it is.
So in that sense, suggested we leave the wording as it is, unless others can further clarify what was said. The others? So, again, move to accept these minutes, approve these minutes,
Are we just doing the 7th or the 12th or both of them?
just the seventh.
Okay.
So you already have a motion, right?
Yep, just gotta vote on
Okay,
it.
so you just gotta vote on it.
So, all in favor of approving these?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes of October 7th have been approved. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for October 12th of 2021?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from October 12th.
Second? Discussion. Hearing none. All voting in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes for October 12th, 2021 are approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. This can be about any topic, contrary to the topics we just discussed before. We're specific to the 2 items of the Chapter 20 Zoning Board of Appeals Amendment and the Section 2.16 High Watermark Amendment. Anybody that's interested in commentary or making comment to the chair, please submit a comment card and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone?
Yes, Jerry Colco.
Aha.
I was going to say right away, it feels strange being on this side versus 6 years being on the other side.
Stranger
Anyway,
being on
Jerry
this side.
Kolka, 2341 San Marino Trail, Key Wade, Michigan here. And I have material I'm going to pass out later to the board, just some ideas I have of a handout to give you some of my thoughts and things you should look into and look at. Just to say, I've been on the Planning Commission over 6 years, chair over 3 years, and good luck to you. It's a tough job, but it's kind of rewarding. One of the things I have here is saying that none of us do it for any money. You know, that is, I hear that once in a while. I say, come on now, I can make more working McDonald's than I could doing everything here, especially with all the hours. When I was a commissioner, I was figuring I'm making about $10 an hour. When I was chair, you pay a little bit extra money for it. I was down to about $5 an hour with board meetings and all the other activities you do. So that's never been a concern. But the reward of it. So I really do think it was very rewarding, interesting, and be surprised how many things I pick up in a paper now. I say, wait a minute, I understand it. I can explain it somewhat to my wife, who asks a lot of good questions on things. So it's very, very good function to do. It's something you give the community, and we go from there. Again, I wrote down here, I find at times, you will find it too, like I did, frustrating, overwhelming, and you wonder why the H did you ever agree to it. But you also will find it rewarding, really it does. I really enjoyed it, met a lot of great people, and had some very interesting discussions. What I say though, being on the Planning Commission is really democracy in action. You are not elected, you're appointees, you're not a committee, you're a commissioner. And that's a very distinct difference. In the law, there's very few things that they can remove a commissioner from because you don't agree with something or you're following it. It's independent, it's an objective way of looking at things. One of the things is, and there's nothing against Jason Merchant, but he can't be chair because he's an elected official. And that's one of the things that's written into law, because anybody who's on the board cannot be the chair or vice chair. In case you didn't make it, or whoever doesn't want it, and he wants it, he can't do it. So if you go to the law, you find out it was set up that way. And there's a lot of good courses you can take too. I plan to attend the meetings here, sometimes in person, sometimes back at the house. I can relax, may have a glass of wine and watch everything going on. But I think it's very important what you're doing. Even the discussions that you had here with different viewpoints, that's good to get out, get the information, and keep them going. I have some handouts here that I'd like to just give to the board. I won't go through the handouts in the interest of time, but it's what I put together. That's my note. There's a lot of good ideas in there where everyone here on the board should have your own copy of the bylaws. The bylaws, if you had your training, you should have it. And there's different sections in it, I think, more important than the other ones. You talk about conflict of interest. It lays out some of it. The format of the meeting, voting, so on. There's also a training program that you should all take. And in the bylaws, there's requirement of the planning commissioners training you can take online. That's a requirement the first year. And then there's other training to keep you up to date. There's a lot of good things you can find out through the training. Sarah's very good at giving input, but also it's different when you meet other people. Hopefully we can do that pretty soon again and attend the training sessions. You learn a lot. One reason why I moved off being chair was I had a triple bypass about almost 2 years ago. The funny part of it was I was taking agriculture tourism because I wanted to learn a little bit more about it in Petoskey. Not feeling good, stopped in Charlevoix before I know it was an ambulance going down to Munson. And after that, I figured somebody else should take over But it's very, very good, and I'm glad, you know, you have a chair to rely on. So you a lot of times, as a vice chair, in my opinion, should tend to activities with him, and you can discuss things. The other thing, in all the manuals, be careful of 4 or more getting together, even if you're before a meeting, after you congregate. Some people can infer that as you're discussing, you know, activities and meetings. Okay, that's my spiel here, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry, so much.
All right, Rob or Mary? Go to the, oh, sure, absolutely. All right. That'll do.
Okay, that moves on from public commentary.
I did not hear your comment, Mr. Chairman, about public comment. Is are the topics already discussed in the public hearing?
In the public comment, you can comment on either subject.
Bob Spencer, 709 Northwest Torch Lake Drive, Keewaydin. Just a quick comment. The concept of a meander line, where if you have a 150-foot wide Torch Lake waterfront lot, where do you put the ordinary high water mark? Is it halfway across the lot? Is it, if the lot is angular or meanders as most lakefront lots do? Is it on this north property line, on the south property line, 50%? How far from the meander line? I just think there are an awful lot of variables, and that's the only thing I wanted to point out, and wish you good luck sorting it all out.
Awesome, thank you. So next item on the agenda is ongoing reports. The zoning administrator's report.
It's included in your packet. If anybody has any questions, I'm open for those.
Any questions from commission members?
No.
No? The PC representative, the ZBA report.
We don't have
We
one
don't
of
have
those.
That's right. Okay, we'll move on to item C then. The Torch Lake Township Board representative on the PC report.
Yeah, really, the only thing I wanted to mention is finally, I believe it's been about 2 years, but we finally have a zoning enforcement officer, Mr. Bob Hawkins.
Congratulations, Bob. Anything else, Jason? Okay, excellent. Okay, moving on to the next item, correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
I do not have any. Laura, you've not received any?
Okay, items of new business. Sarah, do we have any items of new business for tonight?
No new business.
Okay, on to unfinished business. The first item would be discussion around Chapter 20, the Zoning Board of Appeals amendment. I think it would be helpful, at least certainly for me, and I'm not certain about the other new members, but Sarah, if you wouldn't mind describing a little bit about how this came about.
Sure. So Chapter 20 has to deal all with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and about annually, they go through and look at all their rules and procedures and applications and this section of the zoning ordinance to see if it's working for them, if they need to change anything. So this year, when they went through, they had a couple of changes that they made in there. Some of it has to do with either removing items from their bylaws or adding to their bylaws. So you'll see one of the sections that has quite a bit of change, which is in 20.06 dimensional variances. A at the top, it's all red there. That those requirements were in their bylaws, but not in the zoning ordinance. So they're not regulating in the bylaws as they are in the zoning ordinance. So some of those changes have to do with that, and others were some clarifying items from them. So the Zoning Board of Appeals, after they were happy with the changes, they forwarded them on to the Planning Commission requesting that you would basically adopt them or recommend adoption to the Township Board. So And just to do zoning ordinance amendments really quick, for any of the new members. So a zoning ordinance amendment, the planning commission is responsible for drafting, writing, reviewing the amendment. And then once you are satisfied with that language, holding a public hearing. Following the public hearing, you make a decision on the amendment. You can recommend it, you can deny it, you can make changes. Once you make your recommendation to the township board, it goes up to the county, and the county has 30 days to review it at the county planning commission. And then it comes back to the township board. The township board gets the final vote on it. They're the policymakers for the township. So they can either accept your recommendation, or they can change the language, or they can deny your recommendation, depending on kind of how they see fit. So this would be something that we had the public hearing tonight. If everybody's happy with the language, the next step would be to basically forward it on to the county en route to the township board. I did mention in the memo that we are working on a rewrite of the zoning ordinance. So if you wanted to, we could hold off and incorporate these changes into that rewrite instead of passing along as a separate item right now.
I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
Is there any, you and Jackie are the ones that are working with this every day, is there any advantage to one way or the other? I guess right now you may have benefit of using this framework in a little faster time frame to prevent any inconsistencies which may arise from applications which could be submitted sometime between now and when
Yeah.
the rewrite actually
Yeah.
occurs.
You know, there's nothing that is, I would be concerned about legality or being challenged on the language. There are some items that definitely make it easier for the zoning board of appeals. So one of the sections, which was green, and I think Jackie handed out at a separate page that had that, talks about staking. It's the last item, staking the line by a surveyor. So what the zoning board of appeals finds is that either the people don't stake the line, so when they go out and do a site inspection, they can't see where it's at, or they incorrectly stake it, because unless you've had a survey done, most people have no idea where their property lines are and just make assumptions on it. So that's probably one of the biggest items, but, you know, legally or procedurally, I'm not concerned about it. It's something we definitely could put into the new ordinance. You know, it's something that is helpful to the ZBA at any time.
Yeah, I think when we first discussed this, they, I forget who was sitting out there, but they said, yeah, they would appreciate having it sooner rather than later.
Does that mean, are you proposing or recommending that we send on, if we approve this language, send this to the county now and then do other portions of the ordinance later?
Yeah, this
Okay.
chapter would just go to the county, and then there may be some changes to this language when we do the rewrite. So you may be seeing some additional changes, but we'll incorporate for sure some of these newer items that are in here into that language.
Great, thank you.
Other comments, thoughts on this?
Andy, not really thoughts. I took some time and went through the language and had questions with Sarah and Jackie before the meeting, and so I could understand things like the pieces that were added, the sub bullets on section 20.06, where they came from. They came from the bylaws. So I understand it all pretty well. And thank you again for your help walking me through that.
I have a kind of just, Barbara?
No,
I'm sorry.
listen.
I have a kind of a broad question, and that would be, it seems like the zoning board of appeals went to the work to put this together. They felt there was some degree of, maybe urgency is too strong a word, but something that they felt that would make it easier for them to conduct their business. And so my question is, why wouldn't we move ahead with this, assuming that the language is reasonable to everyone and addresses the concerns that the ZBA says that it does?
I agree. Do you need a motion on that?
Yes, so-
Make a motion that we accept the rewrite of Chapter 20 Zoning Board of Appeals Amendment.
And forward to the county and
forward to
township
the
board.
county. Sorry.
Can I ask something on 2006? A, those bullets, the 1 through 6. I guess they read weird to me, so it wasn't anything important. It just read weird. And then I didn't understand number 2. Show exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or the shape of a specific piece of property on the effective date of this ordinance. I didn't understand that, shape of a specific piece of property.
Yeah, so all of the variance requests should be tied to the property and be unique to it. So if the shape, say it was a really skinny piece, well, we've got shallowness, say it's a triangle or something, that just makes it difficult to construct in. And then you have a hill or a wetlands or something. So the shape of a specific piece, property.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Then I think just from A, that sentence there, if you were to read that and then read the next one, like I would have said, are not applicable to most other lands, structures. Number 4, I don't know, maybe there are extraordinary conditions of land, buildings or structures. I would have gotten, I can,
Yeah, I mean, we can add those couple of words in there still today before we send it on.
I think it makes it read easier.
Yeah, that works. So you were saying for number 1?
I think I would get rid of R above number 1.
Oh, yeah, okay,
And then add R on 1.
okay.
And then number 4, I wasn't sure if this is what I was saying. There are extraordinary conditions of land, buildings, or structures. Okay. And then number 5 affects the development of property.
Yep.
That was all I had.
That seems reasonable.
Other members agree with those changes? So we had a-
Yes.
Great. So we had a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll amend my motion to include the changes that we just put in here.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. So the Chapter 20 Zoning Board of Appeals Amendment changes have been approved. Or actually, to submit to the county, I should say.
Yeah.
So the next one, the Section 2.16 High Watermark Amendment. I would like to open up the discussion around this one. I felt that both the public commentary was very helpful to me to add some clarity, but it also raised some questions, at least in my mind. And I think that this is an important item because while it's relatively few words, those words really have a lot of meaning here. And so, I personally don't feel that we need to be in a hurry on this. I realize that it's an important item that we need to get to, but I think we will have some time to address this in the short coming weeks. So, but having said that, just invite thoughts, comments about it.
Yeah, and I wrote down a few questions. I agree. Great public comments. Do we know from the other townships, and I know Mr. Stridiron talked about other townships, some around Torch Lake, some up in Charlevoix, but the first public comment about having something consistent within the townships that surround Torch Lake, if we don't have that, I think that would be good for the planning commission to know before we made a decision. Perhaps even have conversation with those townships to see, if they've been considering redefining what that is. The other comment I thought was good was where on the property it might be measured. I think the words that are in there right now with just water's edge is confusing because it does change. And so I like the idea of consistency, a high water mark being based on a survey. I don't think anybody's going to get a surveyor to come out for just $50. That might be, the amount that's charged after a call, but probably if there's construction going on, it's not a significant difference. And if it avoids some confusion or inconsistency around the township, I think that'd be beneficial. But I agree with you. I don't think it's a hurry because I'm sure that this is one of the more common requests that come to the township to have structures, constructed within 50 feet or not.
Other thoughts? And I can, Bill, I can also say, I live on the bay and I've recently had some surveying done and had the ordinary high water mark, the 50-foot setback from that, the 100-foot setback. Well, I probably didn't do the 100. This was 50 feet. And then there's also in the bay, there's something called the high erosion line, which is yet another factor that again, like what the public commentary said, it's another thing that changes, and boy, it can change next week, on top of what the water level's doing. So I don't have the same insights into the Torch Lake, and that's why, to me, I want to be able to study this a little bit more, and again, that public commentary reemphasized my need to do that.
I'm very much in favor of having something that doesn't change. I don't know how easy that is, but it sounded in past conversations that the zoning administrator had quite the time making a case with the high water mark, with the way it was written today.
I'm personally in favor of having, it's not a high water, it's an elevation, a point of elevation on your property, which may or may not be on dry land. It might be 10 feet out from the water. Which in practicality would close your setback a little bit, but, you know, that's at your risk if you want to get that close to the water, or, you know, whatever. But I like the consistency part of it, because we've got so much problem in the past over the setback, you know, from the lake.
I agree with you on that. The consistency seems appropriate. The question is, at what point do you establish it and why? And then also, what are the considerations for transitioning to that? Once you implement this, what impacts does it have on people? And how can we best help them manage that? You know, because one question to me is like, suppose we did draw a line right now, and this is what it is. And suppose we decided to keep it at this number, the 590.8, and we did that tonight. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's got to go out and survey their property. They don't have to survey it if they need to take action. They're going to build onto something, or they're going to, you know, there's a question at stake. But I think, but there could be some other things that I'm not aware of, that
Applications in process,
applications in
perhaps.
process. And what happens if somebody's in violation of it now? Do all of a sudden, whoops, my house is too close. So those are, you know,
I believe anything present would be
excluded. and
Right, would
grandfathered.
be a non-conforming for the future. So, I mean, I can understand, you know, not having some of the background. We did go through and look at other ordinances. I was trying to find the document, and I can't find that to say what other townships around the lake had. Maybe they didn't have any. Some of them don't talk about the high water mark or even have zoning around Torch Lake. So, but I know Milton is the same, and there was a memo in there that talked about the pros and cons of the different ways of dealing with the high water mark, or where you measure from and define the high water mark. So if that's something that you're interested in too, I kind of I can bring that back so
That'd
that,
be helpful. Be very helpful.
okay.
So, I guess I'd ask the commission for a motion to basically defer this until a future meeting after we've had a chance to research some of these questions.
So yeah, to table it to a future meeting.
Yes. And I think, I don't want to push it off too far. I think it's something we should try to address yet this year, but we do have some other items that are very important as well. So anyone want to make a motion?
And I'll make a motion to defer the section 2.16 for Water's Edge until a future meeting.
Great. Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So let's move on to item C. Item C is Village Business Commercial Zoning District discussion. I think the material for this, I think some of you have maybe quite familiar with it. I saw it before because in a prior planning commission meeting that I attended, I've looked at it a bit myself today. But this to me is an incredibly important item, important on two fronts. One is it's going to have tremendous impact on businesses, potential businesses going forward. And two, there's some urgency to consider this and look at this quickly. So one of the primary objectives that I want to make sure we establish tonight is the process for making sure that we have a chance to discuss this as a group, not only today, but in future special meetings, which I'm going to propose in a second, but also have the ability to, make sure that everybody's comfortable with it and make sure that we are set to go, because we're looking to have a public hearing on this when's the public hearing?
I'd like
Yeah.
to get a public hearing at the beginning of December. The issue with it and why we're trying to move quickly is because there is a moratorium on this portion of the township, these zoning districts, and that's why we were kind of working on that. The moratorium expires December 7th. And so trying to move forward with that. And then for a public hearing, it takes a month from when you tell me to do a public hearing to have that meeting, just for publication deadlines. And so if we're trying to move towards getting, to a public hearing, I would like to get one scheduled, and we definitely could have a meeting or two before that public hearing to iron out the language. But if you're not comfortable moving that quickly or setting that up, then maybe it's something that we'd need to, come back next week to discuss further or something, and then schedule the public hearing. I don't want you to be rushed, but it is kind of a rush, we have a time constraint that we're trying to work within too, so.
How far in advance of the meeting does the notice need to be public?
It has to be published in the newspaper a minimum of 15 days prior to the meeting. And then we publish in the Elk Rapids News, so that's a weekly paper. Then they have their deadline. So that's why it gets to right around a month to get it in the paper.
So the first item, if we were kind of putting the point forward of when we would like to have action completed by, just put that point forward and then map backwards to what we need to do to get to that, all the actions we need in front. So it sounds like if the moratorium ends on December 7th, we would seek to have the public hearing maybe the 6th or the 8th, something right around there, if that's possible.
Yeah, that week would be ideal if the planning commission is available. The nights that I have available that week, Monday the 6th. And then I don't anticipate having a zoning board of appeals meeting. Actually, that meeting got moved anyways no, it didn't. Never mind. I don't anticipate having any applications for the ZBA, so we could use their meeting night, which would be the 8th as well.
So what would work better for people here? I assume maybe the 8th might be better because it's middle of the week, but I don't want to presuppose that.
I cannot do the 8th.
Can I do the 8th? How about you? Could you do the 6th?
I could do the 6th.
Can everybody here do the 6th? Okay.
Is it Monday?
Yeah.
I can't do the 6th.
You cannot do the
No.
6th. Okay. So, and the 7th is off limits because,
I have a meeting the 7th.
Oh.
I have two meetings the 7th. Do we have a time when there's a majority of the members can be public for that public hearing?
I can do either.
I think I could do either. I'd probably prefer the 8th, but
I can do either one.
Okay.
I'm in town on
Okay.
okay, so we
So
have
you-
2 people missing on the 8th and 1 missing on the 6th. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, so I would pick the 6th,
Yeah, I
the
think
6th
we'll go
then.
with the 6th.
So we would just need a motion then to schedule the public hearing for the language for a meeting on December 6th at 7 PM.
So procedurally, I can make a motion, correct?
Yep.
So I'll go ahead and make the motion to hold the public hearing for the Village Business Commercial Zoning District discussion for the evening of December 6th.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Jason, we'll have some special meetings leading up, so we'll make sure that you are obviously can be included in those because it'll be important for your input as we go into that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Right. I'll be here the 6th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can't be the 6th,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but I'll be, yeah,
No,
yeah,
I'll
it's
be
okay.
here.
Sorry. Okay, so leading up to that point, I'm making the assumption here that we won't be able to go through everything in the detail that we would need to, at least for the new commission members tonight. So it would take at least one more special meeting. I apologize for the planning commission members that have gone through this in excruciating detail and are comfortable with it already. I do make that apology, but given the sensitivity and importance of this, I think it's good to have as much collaboration, as much kind of group consensus around this as possible. So I'm going to suggest at least one and possibly, actually, I would suggest we do two. We may not need the second one. Okay, we get through the first one, it may go fine and we have a chance to assimilate into this stuff and then go, and that would be great. But if we have to, then we've got them there if we need them. So ideally, I'd like to do these, we don't have much time, so possibly even one next week and one the following week, if at all possible. So possibly next Tuesday, I think it's the 16th.
That's our township board meeting.
That's not a good night then, unless,
Well, we could do it, if we could do it earlier than the board meeting. If we could do it at like 5 and then say you have to be done by 6:30 so the board could meet afterwards. I mean, or we can, that Tuesday night's the only night that I have open.
oh,
So we've got the zoning amendment or zoning ordinance we read on Wednesday night, and I've got a couple other meetings. So
what about like the day before? What about Monday?
the Monday, I have a meeting that night at 6.
Do we have anything Wednesday?
Wednesdays I can't do.
So, I mean, we may just have to go to
What about this Thursday?
this Thursday.
No?
No.
It's too early.
No, just
Oh,
I have like 3 meetings or 3 nights a month that I don't already have a meeting on. So, so I guess next week may not work. So we could look at the following week and the week after, maybe. The 23rd, Tuesday, the 23rd.
I can do the 23rd.
I can do the 23rd.
so can I.
Yes. Okay.
And then if we need another session after that, I guess, well, we'd have the following week, we could do one if we needed to. Because I don't think once we actually have the discussion and we just make the tweaks to the language, I mean, then we can advance it quickly.
Right. Ideally, it'd be something we can talk on some items maybe tonight, and then I can get some changes for the next meeting, and then you'd look at that, and there may be a few more changes that would be needed, hopefully minor, coming into that public hearing. So hopefully that meeting would be fairly quick. The next one, we'd want to try to get it earlier in the week, just because if we're going to be having that public hearing the following week, we want to have that language available for the public. So either Monday or Tuesday night.
I would suggest Tuesday, because that's coming off the holiday weekend in case people are traveling.
Yeah.
I'm not per se at this point, but. others
And
might be.
we'd always cancel it if we
Yeah, we
didn't
can
need
always
to have it.
cancel it. I'm hopeful that we can get it done in that first meeting, but just in case.
The 30th?
Does that work for everybody? Okay, great.
Are you about at 7?
Yes.
Yeah, works for me.
Excellent.
Guess I should check and make sure our camera guy's available.
So,
Okay,
so
he's
question, the 23rd is, we're meeting 30th is if necessary, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So, I guess with that, I don't mean to take the meeting from you. Go ahead.
No, please, go ahead and count.
I'm sorry this wasn't in your packet, that was an oversight, but the language that is in front of you, this is the second time that the existing members have had to take a look at this language. So all of the blue language was presented at the last meeting that the planning commission met and discussed for making changes to the village business and the commercial district. And then any of the changes or corrections that the planning commission suggested at their last meeting is highlighted in yellow. So I wanted you to be able to see all the changes together instead of accepting the changes and then just showing you what happened from the last meeting for that. So some of the bigger items was in the village business district, only allowing retail stores less than 3,000 square feet as a site plan review. And then over 3,000 square feet would be allowed as a special use permit. So the difference between that is a site plan review is essentially a use by right. Someone comes in and they dot all their i's and cross all their t's. There's no discretion built in at the planning commission level. If you have a special use permit, there's a public hearing, so the neighbors get notified within 300 feet. It gets published in the newspaper. And then there is a little bit more discretion built into the planning commission's decision. So a special use is saying this use is compatible with the zoning district, but maybe only in certain locations, depending on the neighborhood. Versus the site plan review is saying this use is compatible with everybody that's zoned this certain way. So that's kind of the big change in the village business, has to do with decreasing the size and the approval process for those retail stores. And then we built in there in section 10.05, kind of some facade details, landscaping requirements, parking requirements, and screening and buffering to try to enhance the aesthetics if something is constructed. These would apply to anybody, so not just the retails that we're making changes to. These are all commercial uses would have to comply with these items that are on page 10-5 as far as lot coverages and, like I said, landscaping and items like that. Right now in our zoning ordinance, we don't have any lot coverage, impervious surface requirements for any districts. The landscaping requirements that are very much lacking. And this requires the parking to be on the side and the rear of the building, trying to bring the building up closer to the road, and not having that parking be that first thing that you see in that. And so that's a change from the ordinance. And then also talking about windows in the facade, what that looks like, and screening for your trash and recycling, which our ordinance currently does not require you to screen your dumpster in any way. So a lot of discussion, you'll recall at the last meeting, had to do with the facade, what that looks like, talking about the steel exteriors and how to deal with that, so we don't kind of get that pole barn look, to try to find another way to do that. So the planning commission came up with the facades facing the road had to be of a more natural material, and then the sides and the back could be a steel, more pole barny look for that structure. So, and then we did carry some of that over into the commercial district. So the village business is up Eastport area and Torch Lake area, and then the commercial area, there's kind of a chunk down by the airport, and there's a couple other small spots in the township that are just zoned commercial. And this kind of allows for larger stores, kind of, I'm going to say an easier approval process, but a site plan approval process for those stores instead of as strict in our village, where you're looking for the kind of hamlet, the village feel you're building into it. That's why we're going for the aesthetics and items like that.
So Sarah, a couple questions. When these changes, these verbiage changes occurred, where do the words come from? Who wrote them? I mean, is it from individual planning commission members? Was it a combination of, did you draft it and then the planning commission
Yes.
reviewed it?
I drafted it. We talked about it at a meeting and came up with some concepts, and then I went back and just based on other village ordinances that I've worked with, kind of looked at some of that language to bring over to fit the feel of what we were looking for.
So you kind of look through examples from your own experience of
Yeah.
working with other townships to find language that kind of tries to address the needs of the commission.
Right.
Or of the community. Okay. And like, where did the, like, 3,000 square feet as opposed to 4,000 or 2,000, where does that come from?
That was the planning commission came up with that number.
Okay.
After some discussion, and I don't have the piece of paper with me, but I gave some examples of different buildings in the area that would give an example of what 3,000 is or 5,000 is. knowing that the existing stores 15 to 20,000 square feet. I can't remember my 3,000 square foot example. I think it was the real estate office in Elk Rapids on the northwest corner of the light. There's a brick real estate office. That I think is 3,000. And then across the street is the restaurant, the Riverwalk. And they're closer to 5,000, 6,000 square foot, if I recall correctly. But those are the examples. And I think a standard Walgreens, a normal Walgreens is right around 10,000 square feet, maybe 10 to 15. But so trying to get an idea of what it was, how big we would need,
And like a McDonald's,
right?
how big would that be?
I think a McDonald's is probably 5 to 10, but I don't know. I'd have to measure one. You think bigger than that? Smaller than that?
Smaller.
Smaller? Yeah, because they're kind of narrow.
I can find that out.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
interesting. I think it'd be helpful to get a frame of reference about what these sizes mean. and
Yeah.
up to-
I can bring back some of those examples that I had
That
for
would
that
be really
meeting,
helpful.
and I'll look up a McDonald's too. Is there one? There's not one right around here, is there?
Hello.
Huh?
Charlotte,
Charlotte? I can- Okay. Oh, Bel Air.
Yeah, Charlotte.
Okay.
not that I go there very often.
Probably drive-through.
Chair, can I ask a couple of questions also,
Absolutely, Please.
just so I have some context on how the revisions were developed? Sarah, I think you said there wasn't consideration, or you didn't talk about lot size or lot coverage when you talked about building square footage. Is that right? Or that we did?
For this section, we did,
Okay.
but nowhere else in the ordinance is the lot coverage mentioned.
Okay.
So that'll be something that hopefully we'll bring back in the rewrite to help preserve some of our natural area and not allow you to pave everything.
Yeah, because I think of the two things together, the building size and the lot size. And just want to make, see if that we can address that as part of the ordinance revision. So you mentioned a village feel, and I'm glad we used some go-bys of other villages, kind of, maybe. We're unique, so maybe we can be unique, but were there particular village ordinances you looked at to help give me and the township residents kind of an idea of
I'm
what the
trying,
planning commission was thinking of when we
Yeah.
were defining this ordinance? Are we trying to be a little bit like Alden or a little bit more like Kalkaska?
right. Yeah, and I think in looking at the other places, the landscaping, that was something I've seen. One of the items I brought up was the foundations planting, because that's right next to the building instead of having it all out at the road, or I think that it just makes the building look nicer. And so that was from one of my experiences in a different township. I think they do that over in Green Lake and Long Lake in Grand Traverse County. So I brought some of that up from there. The parking in the side and the rear, that's just a plannery thing,
Standard.
I guess. And then for the village stuff, as far as the slope, we actually got that from a builder on what kind of a minimum pitch typically is, because I had it in there 512, which I don't recall where that came from, but the 412, just trying to get not a flat roof for that. And the window coverage, the 65% is a little bit aggressive for the window areas, but I think you would look at, like downtown Traverse City is more than that, but some of their residential, not so much, because we're trying to create, it's not a downtown area. So you're
Right.
kind of more of a residentially village. So you're looking at those kind of villagey, what they would have for their construction. So, yeah, maybe like Mansalona, we did their ordinance. Kalkaska, we've done their ordinances. I just got done with one up in Calumet, too, for their village.
Bill's comment about like Alden, I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting one. I hadn't thought about that one. And the contrast between Alden and Kalkaska, when you think of it in that framework, it kind of makes you have a certain vision of what you're trying to achieve or maintain, so to speak, as we support growth. So it'd be interesting to kind of see what, compare and contrast what theirs look like.
Mhm.
Sarah, I have a comment on this, if I can figure out. On the village business, it's the last part. See, additional commercial design standards.
Mhm.
The paragraph C of that, the first sentence sounds fine. The second sentence doesn't make any sense
Where
to
is
me.
this?
Oh, yeah, I'm, because we changed that language, shall only be allowed on facades not facing.
Road right away not be permitted, the not be permitted,
Oh, that needs to be stricken,
okay.
the not be permitted. Because it used to say exterior, steel exterior shall not be permitted. So now it would say steel exterior shall only be allowed on facades not facing the road right of way.
Okay, that clears that up. And then under the commercial, I guess this is, I'm sorry. The next part, which is what, permitted uses on the commercial zone.
Mhm.
The facade paragraph on that one, which is on the very back of the handout,
Mhm.
it just says steel exteriors are not to be permitted.
Mhm.
Shall not be permitted. We don't want any steel structures in the commercial areas.
You know, I don't recall the planning commission discussing that at the last meeting. It would seem like if we're going to allow some exterior in the commercial, we would want to allow some in the, or I'm sorry, the village commercial, we would bring that over. So either at least what we have in the village commercial.
I have it noted on the commercial that it was the same.
Same, okay.
Okay.
I do recall being at a meeting where this was discussed. And I remember some public commentary around concerns over completely excluding steel construction.
Right.
And the concern was that it's a very relatively low cost and very durable structural thing to use. So the question could be, can it be allowed? And at the same time, by forcing like a fascia to address concerns over look and feel.
Mhm.
The similar thing on that had to do, from what I remember, on the slope of the roof as well. This basically would say that at least for the village, not the commercial, but what we call the village business, that you wouldn't be able to have a flat roof, correct?
Correct.
But the person who raised the concern, I remember, I never thought about this, but like a lot of times those buildings, you have compressors and things. And if you have a flat roof, you can put a compressor on top of it, and then you don't have to deal with it on the ground. And so, hey, geez, well, if you had it up there, but you had a facade, something that protects it, so you can't see it from the road or the main aspect, it might actually be a better outcome, at least the laid out the commission to think about, because the points were well taken.
Yeah, I mean, the Eastport Market, that's flat. The Village Market, that's flat. They got all their compressors up there.
Yeah, that was one thing that I still wasn't sold on when I read through, even at a 412. Yeah, I could do without that.
This is a really good one.
Also, Sarah, I'm sorry. It says that the floor level, the highest floor level can't be more than 21 feet.
Yes. That's on page 10-4 in item A.
But anyway, the point was going to be with a slope roof. If we have that, that could be defined as a two-story structure.
Mm.
It would be hard on a building of any any substantial width for the sloped roof and still stay under the, is it 45 feet or 41 feet? max?
41.
No. Yeah, it's 41 feet and, in here we measure it from the peak of the roof to the ground. It's very specific here. I don't know why we measure it differently in the commercial district than we measure it in the residential district for your building height. That's interesting. Because in the building height, it's to your midpoint. It's not to the peak.
I'll continue to just take general questions. That is, the native landscaping, definitely needs some requirements around landscaping and planting and so forth, but I don't know, I mean, I know what the word native means, but when it comes to native plants, I think, is that defined somewhere?
It is not defined. I could put a reference into, there's a recommended planting guide that was put out by the Invasive Species of Northwest Michigan or something like that. We could reference that guide. And it was designed for municipalities to be able to use to require native plantings in their.
We also link to it.
I can link to it, yeah. So I'll put that reference in there and then we can link to it and we'll have it available on the website too.
So, Sarah, at this point for this evening, I think people are probably starting to get a little bit tired. And I think that there's a lot of stuff here. And also, hats off to the prior commission members, the great work that they've done to put this together and working with you, Sarah. There's a lot of good, great stuff to work with here. It's just fine tuning. And again, I think with these scheduled meetings we have, I think we get to a good spot in time for the moratorium. The end of the moratorium. But I guess to the commission members this evening, is any other questions or comments you'd like to make now on this? With that, I'd like to make a motion to table this discussion until, when we say that first one was December what? 23rd?
Yes, 23rd.
The 23rd.
November
November
23rd.
23rd.
Meeting?
Yes.
Ho, ho. And that meeting will pick right up where we left off and go from there.
Yeah, I will make the couple of changes that we discussed tonight, but otherwise leave it unchanged and then you can start right back up.
Okay. So do I have a second to that motion?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So last, concerns of the commission. I'll start with the chair. Just reemphasize to everyone that how a privilege and honor it is to be here working with all these folks up here and also in the community. I very much appreciate it. I'd say a concern. I do think what we just talked about was probably my biggest concern coming in. I would say the other major concern that I had, by the way, that does not mean I'm not concerned about the high water mark. It just means that we will work through that and we'll work through it relatively quickly. But my second biggest concern is with the air park. There was a heck of a lot of discussion around that this summer. There was a heck of a lot of people in the community who came out here to discuss that. So I guess maybe a question to you, Sarah, where is that now? And just kind of get a general sense so that everybody's up to speed of kind of where that was left off.
Yeah. So, the air park and those specific applications to rezoning, he withdrew those. So those are done and over with for now until they come back with something else. A part of that discussion was a motion to look at the master plan and possibly consider adding some language in related to the airport and the zoning ordinance in some manner to create some sort of an airport, either overlay or district or, whatever that looks like. So that's definitely something we haven't had a chance really to work on it because we've been dealing in these commercial districts. So I'm hoping in January to kind of maybe bring back some, this is what we need to do and where we need to do it, and kind of get your blessing on moving forward that way. And then I'll go to work behind the scenes, doing everything, looking at if we can do any zoning amendments without the master plan update, or if we need to kind of look at the master plan and do some airport, put some airport stuff in there. Because the master plan, you know, for anybody, I guess everybody was probably at the meeting or has heard about it, the master plan does not discuss the airport in any way. And the zoning ordinance only discusses the airport in that it allows airport hangars in the commercial district. So that's the extent of our dealings at all with that. So we'll have to come up with a plan on how to, bring in what already exists in the community into our documents.
And I think it also just begs the question too, there may have been a reason why the air park was not included in the master plan.
Mhm.
Certainly could be a logical reason for that. It was just not a big item of concern at the time, or what have you. But there might be some other items. I guess encourage the commission members to think about what other things besides the air park are out there that you kind of brainstorm it yourself. And I think in a future meeting, we should have a discussion on that to make sure that if we go back and there's not something else that we necessarily get caught off guard in the future. I don't have any other concerns. Concerns from members?
Yeah, just my concerns.
Yeah.
No comment.
Consultant?
I'd just like to welcome the new members. I had the opportunity to speak to everybody before the meeting, so that was nice. And to everyone on the planning commission, not just the new members, if you ever have any questions, feel free to call before the meeting, stop in. If you want to sit down, we can make an appointment to talk. I'm here to help you, in your decisions and to get there. So definitely ask away.
Okay, so with that, I think we'll move on to public commentary. Is there anybody that submitted questions for public comment?
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Rob Vermeer.
That's right. I believe so.
Hello, my name is Rob Vermeer, 8619 Sun Bay Court, Williamsburg. First of all, welcome to the 3 new members. Hopefully it'll be very rewarding for you. I wanted to introduce myself and my wife Ann to the new members of the Planning Commission. I'm sure as you were preparing to start your roles, you did your homework on recent events concerning Torch Lake Township. We own Lake Living Properties, the LLC that owns the property on M88 that has been the subject of several meetings since April of this year. As we await the outcome of the petition filed to put the rezoning approval decision of Torch Lake Township on the ballot, we are proceeding with a special use permit to use the village residential property to house the business for Lake Living Services. We are a home watch and handyman maintenance business. We expect to be in front of you again very soon and wanted you to know who we are. We are a very small business with just 2 employees, and frankly, the actions over the past few months have stalled our moving into M88, have caused us financial hardship. Awaiting a ballot decision will further delay us another year. Some people, including some of the Planning Commission and many neighboring homeowners, raised the question during public comment asking why we didn't pursue a special use permit in the first place. Their comments implied that they would have no issue with us doing that. Their comments often indicated that they had no problem with our business, but they were concerned about future owners when we are ready to sell the property. What or who would come next? Please understand that we are not zoning experts, though we are learning. When we purchased the property in March, we went directly to the then zoning administrator looking for advice on how to best proceed. We understood that a special use permit would not apply to us and that rezoning to village business was the best path forward. That was what we understood, and we acted on that advice. We were well down the path, having invested time and money into the rezoning before it surfaced that we could even apply for a special use permit. So that's where we are today. Yesterday, we had a preliminary review of our site plan with the current zoning administrator, Sarah, and hope to have our special use permit considered during the December Planning Commission meeting. We know that letters will be mailed to those within a 300-foot radius. We sincerely hope that those residents who previously seemed unopposed to our business under a special use permit will stay true to those comments. Ultimately, we hope to see the value of our refurbishing a failing building, the old Eastport resale shop, and approve our special use permit when it comes to you. The mission of Lake Living Services is to serve property owners in northern Michigan, the very people who reside in Torch Lake Township. Over half of my customers are in Torch Lake Township. I hope to be operating from M88 as quickly as possible. I look forward to sharing our plans with you in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments this evening? Any other? Hearing none?
I mean,
Yes, Mr. Sridhar.
my name is Bill Stradine, 5903 Monday, 88. I'd like the planning commission to consider something. In our current zoning ordinances, we have nothing to do with rezoning. There's no guidelines, there's no nothing. However, on the other side of the ZBA, they have strict formats to follow when they consider situations like this, not necessarily rezoning, but other things. So I would like you to consider the following. Steve Langworthy, one of our consultants that we hired as a township regarding the air park, extremely knowledgeable of this type of situation, came up with 5 criteria to consider rezoning. I recommend that the Planning Commission look at those 5 criteria and consider putting those into our zoning ordinance. So when this issue comes up again, and it will, that you have particularly fine guidelines to follow as you move forward in this process. Rather than going here or there, or she said, he said, this will give you a little bit more finite decision-making capabilities. So as you move forward somewhere along your agenda, I would like you to consider that if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from, any other public commentary? Any other forms filled?
No.
With that, I think we've completed our agenda for the evening. I seek a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
Second, we have both. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I don't hear any opposed, so we're done. Thank you. Congratulations. Thanks.